Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
The Pacific Group is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and all members of the community are welcome to attend. The single most important aspect of AA recovery, however, is the principle of one alcoholic relating to another alcoholic. Therefore, only alcoholics actually participate in our meetings. If your primary problem is other than alcoholism, we think it would be also helpful to you to contact an anonymous organization which more specifically deals with your addiction. In any case, we hope that what you learn here may be helpful to your recovery and/or understanding. Good evening. My name is Sarah, and I'm an alcoholic. The format of this meeting is two 10-minute speakers, a coffee break, and a main speaker. And tonight, our first 10-minute speaker is Brenda W.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brenda Watson, and I'm an alcoholic. And first, I want to thank Clancy for the honor and the privilege to share here with you tonight. Sometimes this is one of my favorite things. Sometimes this is not one of my favorite things. And tonight, I can just tell you that I'm pretty excited to be here. I'm pretty excited to be sober. I have not had anything to drink since December 14th of 1986. I have not snorted any amyl nitrate. I have not snorted any cocaine. I have not taken any pills or smoked any funny little cigarettes. And for a person like me, I think that's pretty incredible because I love to party. I just love to party. I love to seek those people that were alive, those people that seem to be in the stream of life, and those people that were getting into trouble all the time. Those are my kind of people, you know. And I was born in Guatemala, Central America. I was born to a mom and a dad that didn't get married, and therefore I acquired the feeling of shame at a very young age. I don't remember thinking I have shame, but at a very young age I felt like I had to lie about my situation at home. My father was never around. He only came around like once a year, and about 9 months later I will have a new brother or a new sister. And there were 5 of us, and it was a big family. My mother couldn't stay with us because if she would have stayed, I think she would have kept on having children. So she left and she came to the United States. And one of the first feelings that I had about that was of, you know, how dare she? I never thought, you know, I was talking to her yesterday, and I was saying, you know, how weird it is how I perceived everything that happened in those days. You know, she left because she wanted to give me a better life, because she wanted to send money, because she wanted to send me to private schools, you know. The way I saw it was, she left me. How dare she, you know? And I lived with that resentment for a very long time. I also lived through the resentment that my father was never around, you know. And of course, I couldn't identify any of those feelings when I was a little girl, you know. And I tell you, when I turned 15 and I found the wonderful world of alcohol, I was pretty happy. I was very at ease, because I was always so intense, always so nervous, always so worried about what you thought about me. You know, I used to go to a private school where a lot of rich kids went, and they would ask me where I lived, and I would lie. They would ask me where my parents were, and I would lie. And they would give me a ride home, and I would ask them to drop me off like 2 cities before where I lived, and then I used to have to take the bus, you know. So at a really early age, I was already manipulating, already working hard at maintaining my, my little secret world, you know. And my grandmother also told me that whatever happens in the house, I'm not allowed to go discuss it outside, you know, so I didn't. Anyway, I had my first drink when I was 15. Well, I had my first drink when I was 15. I might have gotten a first drink before that, but I don't know where I learned it. I don't know where I saw it, but I grabbed the bottle, and only you who have done it would understand what I felt that day. You know, I grabbed the bottle and I drank as fast as I could, as much as I could, and I didn't pass it around. I kept it to myself, you know. And that night I went to a lot of clubs, and I felt like I was an adult, you know, and I always lived thinking like, well, when I turn 15, I'm going to do this. When I turn 18, I'm going to do this. When I turn 21, I'm going to do this. And I'm 33, and I wish I was 15, you know. That's just the way it's always been. And anyway, I came to the United States when I was 17. I hadn't had anything to drink, you know, since I was 15 until I was 17, and boy, did I need it. I needed to drink because I'm one of those people. I believe that alcohol was my solution. I believe that alcohol allowed me to be in the same state of mind as everybody else. I didn't feel at ease. I felt like I had to pretend, and I felt like I had to defend all my life. And when I drank, I didn't care, you know. I would go to any length in anywhere to get what I want, you know, and to have fun at all costs. I mean, I never look for consequences, you know, and therefore I paid for a lot of my consequences, you know. As a matter of fact, I'm still repairing the wreckage of my past, you know. And if you're new here tonight, if whatever I say here, you know, you can't identify, please go to another meeting, because there's 2,000 meetings in Los Angeles a week, and if you don't hear something tonight, maybe you'll hear something another night, you know. And that's the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I drank for many years. I used a lot of drugs, not because I liked them, but because they were free, you know. I will take anything that is free, you know. If it's being passed around and it's free, I don't even ask what it is, you know. I just take it, and that's why I did a lot of the drugs that I did. But I drank for probably about, from the time I was 18 until the time I was 26, 27, and at first it was fun. I'm not going to lie to you. At first it allowed me to dance, it allowed me to go to places, it allowed me to be, you know, whoever I wanted to be for that night, you know. And in the end, it turned into a real necessity, because I would wake up in the morning and I would remember what I had done, you know. I didn't have blackouts. I had sort of brownouts or grayouts, you know, where I would remember bits and pieces of the night, and I would remember also my past, you know, what nasty things I had done, you know, and how I had sinned, you know, because I'm also a recovering Catholic, you know, and I had sinned, boy, did I sin, and if I thought it, I had sinned, you know. And today, through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I have found the same God I found when I was 7 years old, you know, taking my first communion. I found him again, you know. I knew he was a loving God then, and somewhere along the line, I forgot that he was forgiving, you know. I forgot that I am his child, and that he is my father, you know. And I have found all of this in Alcoholics Anonymous, of course. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous a year before I got sober. In 1986, early on, I had gotten a DUI, and the judge thought it was necessary for me to attend Alcoholics Anonymous. And he sentenced me to 6 Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and I thought it was ridiculous, you know, just ridiculous. And I walked into an Alano club in the West Side, and I thought, poor things, you know, they really need a drink. I mean, look at them. They get up there and they have the tattoos, and they're miserable, and they look dreary, and they don't have fun, you know. So I would leave there and go have a drink on them, you know. And I did that for a year. I was also going to drunk driving school, where I met someone who introduced me to the Pacific Group. You know, he told me, he didn't say it was the Pacific Group. He just said there's some meetings in the West Side that are attended by a lot of young people, and they play a lot of sports, and they're a very attractive group. So I continued to drink and drive, you know, because I tried to not drive and not drink, and you know what that happens. I mean, you just get all confused and you just do both again, you know. And So I started drinking again like about 9 months after trying to control my drinking. I just gave up, you know, and I just started drinking like on the clock for 3 months. And I came across that meeting directory that guy had given me. And I called him up and I asked him, I said, you know, I had gotten sober. I got sober because a therapist that I attended told me, Brenda, don't go to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's right before the holidays, you know, and you have so much pressure and so much tension. And I'm not blaming her, you know, because thank God I didn't listen to her. Because if I would have listened to her, I probably wouldn't be here tonight. And I walked into AA that night, and for a month I was interviewing for a sponsor, you know, and I just couldn't find anybody who would match my standards. And so I called this guy, and I'm not trying to be arrogant, I'm just trying to tell you where my head was at. You know, I was so stupid, you know. Actually, anybody that had a day more than I had would have been a good sponsor at that time. But I came to the Pacific Group on a Saturday night, and I saw you all the way I see you tonight, you know, which is you're alive, you're well, you're happy, you greeted me, you welcomed me, you told me I was going to be okay. You told me I didn't have to live the way I used to live before. And most of all, I think the one thing that you told me is that I didn't have to just stop drinking, that I could start living now. You know, that I could stop drinking, but I could also continue to live, you know, and get into the action of life. And I'm so very grateful and so very glad that you've gotten me into acting and not thinking and analyzing, because I would have been dead a long time ago. I've had a series of incredible sponsors who have guided me through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, who've allowed me to free myself from the bondage of self, who've allowed me to free myself from all the wreckage of the past, you know, all those things that I felt ashamed about, all of those feelings of being a bad girl, you know. I just wanted to be a good girl. And I know you know I'm a good girl, you know. I am a sick girl, you know. I have a disease called alcoholism, and it's a disease that kills, you know. And I'm glad that we're here. I'm glad that you're here and that you were here for me. And I better stop or the next speaker is going to kill me. Thank you.
Turn the tape over now, please.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious. Do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.